Good afternoon, everybody. If it's afternoon where you are, it's afternoon where I am here in Naarm. Welcome everybody to today's Australian Digital Inclusion Alliance meetup. And today's topic, elevating digital capability for the community sector, that we're presenting today in partnership with the Future Skills organisation. Wonderful to see so many people from across the digital inclusion community joining us. Welcome also if you're joining us afterwards on the ADIA YouTube channel as a catch up. My name's David Spriggs. I'm the CEO of Infoxchange and chair of the Australian Digital Inclusion Alliance. I'll be your host today. We've also got an amazing range of panelists joining us, and I'll introduce them in a second. But first of all, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we're all joining from today. For me, that is the beautiful and unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. You can see those lands outside my window there. It's a beautiful time of year with leaves falling off the trees. Where we are here at Infoxchange, we're just across the road from the Wurundjeri Elder Corporation. So we pay our respects to elders past and present, and encourage you to put into the chat window the lands that you're joining from today. And just a reminder, if you are using the chat, please change. There's a little drop down on the to box and make sure it says to everyone so everybody can see. Can everybody see your messages? And in the context of today, also like to acknowledge the work of the First Nations Digital Inclusion Advisory Group, particularly in this space, and the contribution they're making towards building digital skills in First Nations communities and in First Nations-led organisations, and acknowledge the First Nations digital support hubs that were included in last week's federal budget and the importance of those, keeping our First Nations communities connected. So before we get underway, I'll just run through a few logistics for the webinar. Firstly, noting that this is being recorded and we'll post it online for future reference. And we've got a number of kind of short introductory presentations and remarks to get started today. But we'd really encourage you to put your comments and questions in the chat as we go. For those of you who have joined these webinars before, it's often a very engaging discussion that's going on in the chat while we've also got speakers going. So we'd very much encourage that. And as I said before, just please make sure that your chat is set to everyone. A quick introduction to the Australian Digital Inclusion Alliance. I'm sure most of you are already aware, but the Australian Digital Inclusion Alliance, or ADIA as we shorten it to, is a shared initiative over 500 business, government, academic and community organisations coming together to work to accelerate action on digital inclusion. And our vision, obviously, to reduce the digital divide, but really kind of looking at that broader perspective of enabling greater social and economic participation for everyone in Australia. And we do that by highlighting that imperative to action. And we focus our work on the three pillars of affordability, access and ability, hence why today's topic on ability is so important. The Alliance is supported by Infoxchange, Telstra and Google. But we thank everybody for your contributions into the work of the Alliance. So today's topic, as I say, we're presenting a special meetup today with the Future Skills organisation, and it's part of a broader collaboration that we have with FSO to help create tools, resources and training that help lift the digital capability of community organisations, but also ultimately the people that we're all trying to serve. If you're not aware of who the Future Skills organisation are, they're a federally funded jobs and skills council. They're focused on improving training outcomes. And as part of this work, they're looking at digital capability and what are transferable skills across the economy when it comes to learning for work and life, not just in the employment space. And a hats off to FSO. They've been engaging with the Australian Digital Inclusion for a long time. In fact, even before they were the FSO, they used to be the Digital Skills Organisation. And so we very much appreciate, it's always been a collaborative and consultative approach that they've taken. And hence the work that they're doing now as well, which this is all about understanding how digital skills may apply across different industries. And obviously in today's context, thinking about the community sector. So that's why we're here today. As I say, kind of please engage through the chat as we go and look out for a member survey that we'll be sending out in a few weeks where we'll be asking for more input on this topic as well. A bit of an introduction to how we're going to run today. We're going to have sort of three parts to the program. Firstly, we're going to hear from the community sector. really kind of hearing, what it's like and what are the realities faced by community organisations, how they're using digital tools themselves and digital skills, as well as kind of the challenges in teaching digital skills across the community. Secondly, we're going to hear from the FSO and more about what they're trying to do and where the community sector can help guide that work. And then third, we're going to have a bit of an open discussion between the community sector speakers, FSO, and all of you, hopefully, on what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we need to think about as FSO progress this important work. So quickly introducing our speakers today. From MercyCare Refugee Services, delighted that we have Jacqui, Whelan and Mulay SongSaeng joining us, and we're hoping to very much hear from a grassroots perspective their work in the community. Well known to a number of people here, we have Jess Wilson, the CEO of Good Things Australia. Thank you for joining us, Jess. We have Kaitlin Roach, who's joining us today in her role as part of Regional Development Australia in Tasmania. But many of you may remember Kaitlin as a former co-convener of ADIA. So lovely to have you back with us, Kaitlin. And I'm going to add some perspectives from Infoxchange, including some of the findings from our digital technology in the not-for-profit sector report. And then we're going to hear from the Future Skills organisation. And we've got Rachel Kerrigan and Lisa Bale who are going to join us for that discussion. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to a really fantastic conversation. And I think that's enough of an intro. Very keen to introduce now Jacqui and Mulay from MercyCare, and remind you again to kind of please put your comments and questions and thoughts in the chat as we go. But over to you, Jacqui and Mulay, to kind of get your perspectives on digital skills in your own organisation and the work you're doing in the community.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. As David said, we're joining you today from Whadjuk Noongar country in Perth. Mulay and I both work for MercyCare in the Refugee and Employment Support Services team. I'm the manager of the program. And Mulay is one of our senior caseworkers with our settlement services. MercyCare, for those who don't know, is a large not-for-profit organisation of about 1,500 staff that has services in aged care, early learning, disability services, and family and community services. But Mulay and I focus, our work is on newly arrived refugees, humanitarian entrants, and newly arrived migrants under the SETS program, Settlement, Engagement, Transition Support Services program, funded by the Department of Home Affairs. And we have some peripheral, what we call auxiliary programs that we support people with a specific focus on social inclusion and economic participation in all its many forms. So not necessarily full-time employment being the ultimate goal, but ensuring that people can enjoy the benefits of economic participation in different forms. So as a settlement service provider, we support people primarily within the first 5 years after arrival in Australia. And our work is guided by the National Settlement Outcome Standards Framework developed by the Settlement Council of Australia, SCOA. These outcome standards, the domains in which we support people, are the foundations of good settlement, include education and training, employment, health and well-being, housing, language services, transport, civic participation, family and social support, justice and finance. And you can see with all those domains how increasingly they all intersect with digital literacy and having everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. And Jess, I'm going to quote you, Jess from Good Things Australia, because the other day we were talking and Jess said to support people is to support people digitally. And that really hit me in terms of our daily reality and the work that we do with clients. Everything that we do within settlement intersects with digital. And I think that's really important. And it's only increasing. So our work, rather than focusing on digital literacy as an overarching term, what we tend to I suppose, describe our work with more is about supporting people with digital functionality. Um, Rather than digital literacy, I think conjures up ideas of people sitting in a classroom and learning module to module. Our reality and how we have to support people is really in that daily functionality of how they navigate their lives and navigate systems. And that's why we partner with Good Things Australia. So we've been a Digital Sisters service provider for the last 3 years and since its beginning as a co-design initiative. And the reason we do is because digital support takes time and it takes funding. And what Digital Sisters was able to provide to us as a program was that additional funding that would allow us to meet people where they're at and interact with them to increase that functionality through group work or individual work. So it's been a game changer for us. It's been a game changer as well in the sense that it wasn't necessarily something we recognized we need until we started doing it. And I think, and Mulay will speak to this a bit more about, really then the learnings came and the gaps emerged even stronger. And we were able to put things in place to support people in the community and identify the vulnerabilities. So I'll hand over to Mulay, who can talk a bit more about what we're doing on the ground.
Okay. Hi, David. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. As a caseworker and a digital mentor from Digital Sister, I will just speak from my experience. And I have seen within migrant, when it has come to the digital, I can see migrant and refugee who have limited digital and literacy. They are heavily reliant on their family member, their community, their friend, and also their support person. And the reason why they rely on their friends and other people because of, lack of resources, available in their language, and also due to the safety and scam, they dare not to use their phone. They're afraid of, clicking on any link. So, that's and also language barrier. So it is, this is the barrier, and also to be able to build their digital confidence and independence. We need enough resources to to provide to those people, and also to give them training in their language, but it will take time. Sometimes we have to repeat again and again to be able, for them to do this there. I just had many examples, but I just want to explain, share about one of the case study that I have. I had a newly arrived refugee. She is my client. She is 29 years ago, come to Australia 2 years ago. And then her mom has a mental medical condition, and her mom require an assistant to book an appointment with GP and specialist. And she also participate to one of my program. She come to us every week, and then when she come to the office, she will come to me because we speak the same language. So she mostly every fortnight, because she has so many appointments. So she asked me to book an appointment. So I have realized that this is a really need for her. So I invited her daughter, who is 29 years old, to come to the digital session. So she participated in 3 face-to-face digital sessions, supported by one of the digital mentor who speak her language. And then, after that, she knows how to book an online appointment. She knows how to do online net banking, and also accessing the basic government services such as Centrelink, Medicare, to update their detail, to report their income, or to do fortnightly report to Centrelink. So this is a little things, but has a big impact on myself as well. So since then, I haven't seen her mom come to me asking for the appointment, to help with those kind of things. So I'm so happy, and also it's very helpful and very useful for her as well, also the whole family. So she's doing the online booking for the whole family. So I'm so, so this is a really impact, even though little things can make a big difference.
Thank you, Mulay. And as Mulay said, I think that story really sums up. You can't underestimate the impact of this work and the nuance. And I think people often, what can appear as quite simple to some people, what we have to help people to navigate on a day-to-day basis. But then the flow on impact of, as Mulay said, 3 sessions and the flow and impact of then on someone's life and even to us as a set service provider in terms of the hours of support that we put in. So I just want to sum up just finally, I guess we're saying it is intensive work. It's work that's really beyond Good Things Australia. I don't know of many other funding that's available for this. And so in order to do it well, we do need funding. We need also training of the trainers. So as we've often talked with Jess and the team at Good Things, we've become the experts through this program in our services, and we need more of that. We need more support to support clients. And I think this conversation is a really good start to that. So yeah, I'll leave it there and look forward to sharing more later.
Fantastic. Thank you so much both, and for the amazing work that you're doing in the community. Some great points there. Kind of, I'd love that everything that we do intersects with digital and kind of reframe away from just digital literacy, and such a good point that it takes the amount of time that takes time, and your kind of call for funding there as well. And Mulay, thank you so much for sharing that case study, which I think really brings it to life, and the importance of, as you say, kind of family and community members, the local language, the trust element around safety and scams. I think so incredibly important. So thank you very much to both of you. Encourage kind of comments and questions again through the chat as we go. But I think next we're going to move to Jess Wilson from Good Things Australia for your perspective, Jess.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Jacqui and Mulay. I mean, I could probably just not talk now because I think you've probably really given us the insight of actually what happens on the ground, and that's the piece that we hear all the time from our brilliant partners like you both. And I would say there's a couple of things that you kind of highlighted, but I think are really important. One is that actually this is not just about digital literacy, and this is it's actually about how we support people to do the things that they want to do. And so when we start talking in the community sector about we're going to do digital literacy, a lot of people go, oh, that's not my job, or that's not my thing, or that's not part of, like, I'm not an expert, so I can't do it. And actually where we need to get to is that, everybody needs to be part of the work that everybody is doing, and a recognition about how much time it takes, to not only upskill yourself, because while you're upskilling yourself, you're also helping other people. So that combination, and that's the trick that we have, and it's an amazing skill and superpower in the community sector as well, is being able to support people while also learning how to do the stuff yourself. But that takes effort and time and capacity. So I think that's one of the key things. The other that I heard you talking about, and that we see quite a lot, is around this support from peers. So, the somebody who is a digital mentor who speaks the same language. That importance of having people that are supporting people who are meeting them where they're at. So it is not only we see that in organisations that are delivering digital sisters, but also we deliver a program called Be Connected, which supports older Australians across Australia. And we see a range of different people being supported, who are older people supporting older people, and knowing what's really important there. And likewise, in a program that our Digital Champions program, which is supporting people with intellectual disability, we definitely see the real need for people with intellectual disability to not only learn themselves, but also to get out there and train others about what's important to them and how they learn best around technology. So I think, that piece around making sure that our programs and anything we're talking about around digital is actually informed by the impact that we're trying to have is really, really, really key for us. And I would like, just in terms of bringing it back up to a level around the different digital skills that people are wanting to learn. So across our programs, we get people to collect data around, what people want to learn about. And we know that, the top 3 things that people want to learn are how to stay safe online. So it's actually like, how do I not get scammed? Because that's what I'm scared about. That's what I'm worried about. That's what's stopping me from getting online. So how do I stay safe is absolutely key. And I would just say, as a subsection of that, how do I keep my kids safe online has definitely been a big conversation as well. The second is, how do I access government services? So how do I access those essential services and the funds and the support that I need to be able to live my life? Right. So that's the thing. So it might be that it's, MyGov, or it might be that it's, My Health Record, or telehealth services, but any of those services that actually support people to have a better life and access the support that they need is really, really key. And the third one is around accessing connection with families and friends. So it's actually about, how do I make sure that I'm staying connected to people that I love and that, know me. And, so I think, bringing this kind of digital literacy back to the things that people actually want to do with their lives is really, really important to us in the community sector. And I think what we've seen is that programs like the one that Jacqui and Mulay are running actually have an impact on people. So not only are they, they're helping people to increase their digital skills, their confidence, their online safety, their AI literacy. We've seen 83% have increased their AI literacy through Digital Sisters. That's incredible. But importantly, they focus on everyday independence and social connection. They also, those are the outcomes of that. So I think, that's the key thing for me, is just making sure that we're focused on that. And one last point before I stop, because I know I'm already over time, David, sorry, is that through Digital Sisters, we have seen through that this year, our digital mentors, 1/3 of the digital mentors this year have been previous participants. So actually, by learning something in the community together with others that you know and trust in a trusted space, you're able to build that ability to then help someone else. So I think, not only within a formal setting, but within a family and a community. So that's what we really, really want to be able to support people to do. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Jess. And such important points. And I couldn't agree more. Rather than starting with digital literacy or AI literacy, actually start with community. Start with the community need. What are people interested in learning? And absolutely kind of meeting people where they're at. So thank you so much. And next we're going to hear from Kaitlin. And keen to hear from your perspectives and your experience working now in Tasmania, Kaitlin.
Thanks so much, David. So I'm joining you from the unceded lands of the Palawa people in the northeast of Lutruwita, Tasmania, and I'm certain that I'm going to share a lot of the sentiment that's come across in the discussion already today. But it's wonderful to be here to have the opportunity to share a little insight from the Digital Uplift project that we're delivering at Regional Development Australia, Tasmania. And I would like to give a little shout out to my colleagues, Nathan, Joe and Trish, whose work on the ground is really feeding into what I'll share today, with the hopes that their experiences can shape the important work that the FSO is looking to achieve. But by way of background, in early 2026, so it's very fresh, we were fortunate to receive funding from Telstra alongside project support from Marinus Link and Jobs Tasmania to develop Digital Uplift and fill the void left by the Tasmanian government's former Digital Ready for Daily Life program, which is no longer delivered. Digital Uplift is a digital skilling program aimed at ensuring that working age Tasmanians, from high school leavers to those retraining and right through to retirement, have the necessary skills to participate in the economy and society in our digital world. And whilst our project is approaching digital inclusion through the economic development and workforce participation lens, there is very much a focus on holistic skills for life as well. As you are likely aware, Tasmania faces some of the lowest levels of digital inclusion in Australia. Tasmania is situated behind all other states and territories when it comes to both affordability and digital ability, with only the Northern Territory faring worse for access. Alongside this, we know that adult literacy, remains prevalent as an issue in the Tasmanian community, which adds an additional barrier to digital access. Certainly for some of our most vulnerable community members, many of whom our team are working with or trying to reach. Many of the people our team support don't find their way to us because they're looking to improve their digital skills. And it's going to be important as FSO continue developing this work to grasp the wide variety of contexts that our participants bring and the barriers that they face when we're engaging with them. Based on the early days of Digital Uplift and our team's previous experiences in community-facing digital skilling initiatives, we've found that many digitally excluded people are engaging with technology on an as-needs basis only, in a heightened state to address a need that is often complex or time-sensitive. Their experience with digital technology is poor because it is often not on their own terms and it's a high-stakes scenario. If they get something wrong or it doesn't go as expected, it could directly impact their financial or health situation or unravel a bunch of other additional challenges or expenses. And we can't always help with these hyper-specific needs immediately, so we see two avenues for developing content for community educators. In many organisations engaging with folks who may be vulnerable or digitally excluded, there are often staff or volunteers who are readily available to provide support, but don't necessarily have sufficient digital ability themselves. We see a huge opportunity for upskilling and enabling the people who are available immediately to help with those needs. And for broader community-focused content, we see the challenge in ensuring that content meets people where they're at, which I think is going to be a very common theme throughout the day. And alongside that, coming from a perspective of shifting mindset around engaging with technology, increasing confidence, and in doing so, improving a person's ability to continue experimenting or developing their skills as technology rapidly evolves. Thanks very much. I'm looking forward to the discussion later on.
Thank you so much, Kaitlin. And again, yes, meeting people where they're at, shifting the mindset, and as you can rightly point out, that wide variety of contexts that people are coming, and yeah, and a lot of work that we need to do in Tasmania, given those digital inclusion index scores. So that probably maybe worth us bringing up later as well, but just really worth thinking about I think you said often not on their own terms, that people are often engaging not on their own terms, not by choice, and kind of how do we help enable and empower in those circumstances. So thank you. I really appreciate your comments. Before we get to FSO, I was just going to share some of our perspectives from our work at Infoxchange, which I think are probably just reinforcing a lot of what's been said, but also to kind of bring some numbers into this as well. As many of you would be aware, we do an annual report on digital capability and digital technology in the not-for-profit sector at Infoxchange. We've been running that survey and that report now for over a decade, so it kind of provides us a bit of a longitudinal view, as well as kind of what are some of those immediate challenges. I thought I'd share a little bit from that report. Probably the headline statistic for this webinar, only 44% of community organisations say that their staff and volunteers are confident using digital technologies. And that's actually fallen. It's gone down 6% from where it was 12 months ago. And so I think that just speaks to the scale of the challenge that we've got in front of us that you've all been talking to. If we're asking frontline workers to help build others' digital skills and respond to all of these digital issues in our communities, if they don't have the skills themselves, then we've got a massive problem. Diving down into a few of the other areas we've spoken about, cyber security. So I think that's come up in most of those, and that talked about people being afraid and the importance of staying safe online. Our survey shows that less than 1 in 5 organisations provide any kind of cyber security training to their staff. And so again, if we're relying on frontline workers to be able to educate within the community and respond to some of those issues that community members are coming forward with around scams, it's critically important that we educate. Data, I think, in our survey, leaders actually said the #1 priority for community organisations is for organisations to be making better use of data for evidence-based decision making. And yet, of course, I say the biggest barrier to getting there is the lack of data and analytics skills within our organisations. And finally, kind of the big topic of AI. And while our survey shows the vast majority of organisations are using generative AI, I think it's 67%. I'd argue it's probably close to 100% when you take into account the staff and volunteers that are bringing the technology into the workplace anyway. Only 14% of organisations have any kind of policy or guidelines on how staff and volunteers should be using AI in their organisations, which we see as a massive challenge, particularly for organisations exactly like the work you're doing, Jacqui and Mulay, where you're working with vulnerable community members. So what do we do about that from an Infoxchange perspective? We've been leading an initiative called the Digital Transformation Hub. That's got a focus on the organisational side. It's funded by philanthropy, tech companies, state and federal government. So it's at no cost to organisations. And it's to help with those kinds of things like, well, we know we need an AI policy, but we don't know where to get started, or we'd really like to do something about cybersecurity. So it provides a range of resources. It has an expert bar on there that people can consult with. And it's not just digital, it also gets out in the community face-to-face as well, which I just think is incredibly important. And then finally, all of that is then supported by a digital learning platform that we've been running that brings together content, not just from Infoxchange, but from a range of different sources. And that's kind of at all levels, from board members to leaders to staff and volunteers working on the ground. And our philosophy in that has been very much what others have just talked about, meeting people where they are, focusing on the needs and what they want to learn. And really acknowledging the capacity constraints. So it's unlikely somebody's going to say, I want to learn about this, and hey, I've got time to spend a whole day running through an e-learning session to learn about this particular topic. It's how do you make it kind of bite-sized? How do you make it relevant? We're also finding a lot in the world of AI of what you'd call more unstructured learning. So it's as much people wanting to come together as a cohort and to be able to ask their questions about AI, with some experts in the room, but often just learning from each other in that kind of a cohort-based learning model. So I think that's really interesting to see, particularly with the advent of AI and everything's moving so fast. Sometimes it isn't so much we need a particular course to do. It's kind of how do you bring people together to learn together. And what are some of the barriers to us breaking through that 44% number that I talked about? I think the pieces we've already talked about. When we do our survey, the number one is always budget. So this work needs to be funded. But the second, which has come through really clearly in these discussions as well, is capacity. So, caseworkers, people on the front line are time poor. And so even if you have the budget and you have the world's best training materials, it's actually being able to find the time for people to engage with that. A final comment from me, I also do think it's a leadership role that all of us need to think about. So we acknowledge those constraints, but how do we find the time in our organisations to do this work, just like Jacqui and Mulay, I think, gave some great examples of before. So it's a few perspectives. I think Tim's been dropping a few links into the chat as I've been speaking. But now we're going to switch gears a little bit and move to the team from the Future Skills organisation. I'm going to hand over to Rachel and Lisa. I think they're going to present a few slides with some of their initial thinking. As they're talking, please start putting your questions and comments through the chat, because when we finish with this presentation, we're kind of keen to open it up and have a bit of a discussion on what that might mean. So over to you, Rachel and Lisa.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks, David. I'm just going to share my screen talking about digital capability. Let's see how well I do this. I'm used to Teams, so apologies. All right. Is everyone able to see my screen? Fantastic. All right. As David said, hi, everyone. I'm Rachel, and I've got my colleague online here as well, Lisa Bale. We really want to thank you for your time today and spending this time with us this afternoon. It's interesting, I think, to hear all the different ways that digital capability has sort of been explained and talked about, and all the different terminology and language that we use around this space. we as an organisation obviously spend a lot of time speaking to government, industry and other training organisations, and as such we love jargon and we love a good acronym. So if I accidentally slip into any of that while I'm talking, I do apologise, because, you know, what part of why we're here is that we know solutions only work if they make sense in the real world. So what we're trying to do is just share a little bit of that with you, some of the work we're doing, some of the learnings that we've got through this work. And most importantly, we really want to hear from you and about what you're actually seeing in practice. So today is mainly about us listening. All right. I just want to briefly acknowledge the Worimi people of Port Stephens, where I live and work today, and pay my respects to elders past and present, as well as the lands that you're on, which has been lovingly done before. And I also would like to acknowledge any First Nations people that are joining us in the room today. Now, what I'm going to do is actually give you a little bit of context about who we are and why we're in this conversation with you. David did introduce us and our organisation, but for those of you who may not have worked as closely with us, Future Skills Organisation, or FSO, there's one of those lovely acronyms, works across the economy looking at how organisations, workers and communities are adapting to changing workforce needs. So whilst our focus has traditionally been sort of on finance, technology and business industries, increasingly the work that we're doing is focusing more on those capabilities that actually cut right across the economy. So that's where we started to look at digital capability, AI, cyber, and those broader human skills that, you know, we need to keep pace with the change these days. So historically, as I said, most of this work has sort of sat firmly in those employment contexts, but more and more through the work that we're seeing and the people that we've been engaging with, we're seeing the same issues showing up outside the workplace as well, which is what we've heard about here today. And again, that's one of the reasons we wanted to speak directly with you, because these conversations shouldn't just be about jobs and training systems anymore. They also need to be how people participate across everyday life. As I said, the pace of change is real, and we are increasingly seeing that reflected in the conversations we're having and in participation data that we look into as well. AI and cybersecurity are no longer confined to those specialist environments or locked in those little rooms or down in someone's basement. They're increasingly embedded in systems people rely on every day, even if we don't realise it. So as more of these services move online, digital capability increasingly shapes whether people can navigate systems confidently and independently. So as we've heard, someone can own a device and still struggle to access services, complete processes, or confidently navigate digital systems. And what's become really clear through this work is that digital capability no longer sits separately from service delivery. In many environments, it's become a part of that service delivery itself. So, you know, as a veteran, I can't do anything with Department of Veteran Affairs without actually jumping online. So increasingly, people like yourselves are having to help others navigate those systems every day while also trying to keep pace with those evolving systems themselves. Now, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story here, so bear with me. It will make sense by the time I finish this. I was at a conference last week, and one of the strongest themes that kept coming through was that people often build digital capability through necessity rather than formal learning. Now, I was speaking to a learning developer in a really large business, and they described supporting someone in that workplace through an online process that they themselves had only just learnt to navigate the week before. So that completely changes what useful support actually looks like. And because nobody in that environment or within their workspace is stepping away for 2 days to complete formal learning every time a system changes, what we're seeing is that the way that learning needs to be developed and the way it needs to be taught is changing as well. And whilst we're hearing these same things across completely different environments, including obviously from yourselves, it's the same sort of theme. So for you, someone walks in needing help accessing an online service, understanding a digital form, you know, setting up identification, all of those sort of things. It's often a volunteer or a support person or a mentor that's figuring it out alongside them in the moment. So people learn more while solving the problems in real time. And this creates a very different environment from the kinds of settings that most of that structured learning and approaches were originally designed around as well. And so this sort of change started us thinking about what other questions we needed to start asking ourselves as we were developing these units. It becomes less about how we deliver more training and more to what actually helps people build confidence and capability in these environments where systems are continually changing. And so that is where our work started evolving beyond more than traditional training approaches. So what we're doing at present in FSO is at a high level, we originally developed these training packages or units. Here I slipped into terminology. So basically training to address needs sitting within more of a formal training system. But increasingly, as we listened to what people were telling us, we started trying to understand how these resources could be adapted into something far more flexible and practical, particularly in environments where people are often solving, as I said, problems in real time rather than stepping away to complete formal learning. What that pushed us towards was smaller modules or pieces of training, practical resources, adaptable content, and things people can quickly pick up and use when they need them. And as technology, as I said, is moving really rapidly and the pace of change is increasing, it's a lot easier to update a small practical resource than it is to redesign an entire training program every time something changes. So rather than fully developing everything first and testing later, we actually have picked a small portion of these training products, and we've actually started trialling these resources early across a lot of different environments. Right now, we're working with a contractor to develop sample resources and test how they work. Some are being tested in more formal learning settings, but we are also working with a small group of people in the community to better understand how these same resources could work in community environments as well. So we're still very much in that testing and learning phase, and this conversation is actually part of that process to help us understand that. So as I said, to support that work, we're actually running a series of workshops through state and territory at the moment with educators, facilitators and community organisations to better understand what digital capability support could realistically look like in community settings. Because while there are similarities across industries, across communities, across learning environments, people operate very differently within the community space from that more structured learning. And one of the things we're trying to avoid is building resources that look good on paper, but don't fit naturally into the environments they're supposed to support. So a big part of these discussions has been understanding where the real friction points sit, what support people are already providing, what challenges keep coming up, what kinds of resources people would actually reach for and use. Because something that works well in a structured learning environment does not automatically translate effectively into other settings where priorities, pressures and needs can shift quickly throughout the day. And I'm not just talking community settings, that's also workplace settings as well. There is a lot of analogy with what people are needing in those environments as well. So honestly, you know, your feedback and connection is so valuable for us right now. And what we're wanting, if something sounds unrealistic, something's inaccessible or simply not working, we'd rather know that now than just have it out there. Because ultimately the value of any resource depends entirely on whether people can actually use it confidently and consistently in practice. So ultimately what we're hoping to achieve with these units is to build resources that people can actually pick up and use when and where they need them. Not highly structured approaches that only work in ideal conditions, but practical resources that can flex across different environments, needs and levels of confidence. We also want work to support safer, more confident and more informed use of digital tools such as AI, online systems and digital processes, because as we've said and heard, these are becoming more and more embedded across everyday life. But beyond the resources themselves, part of what we're also trying to contribute to is a more consistent understanding of what digital capability is across work, learning and life. As I said, there's so many different ways to explain it, and that can be part of the confusion. So if there's some consistency in what it means, there's consistency and understanding, it means everyone's starting from the same level. So these, as I said, these capabilities influence how people participate and not just whether they can perform a specific job. And that's where we're focused. So it's not just on how they can participate socially, economically and professionally, it's across all of it. So we know that there's a huge amount of knowledge and experience and good practice already happening within the sector. We've heard from 3 amazing organisations that are doing some amazing work out there. So part of today is also about listening and learning from what's already working and making sure those insights can sort of help shape the work and where it's going to go next. So today, what I was hoping to do was to start that conversation, share a little bit about who we are, how our thinking has evolved through this work, and where we think there's an opportunity to better support organisations operating in this space. And most importantly, hearing directly from people working with these challenges every day. What we hear will directly support the work we continue to build on as we move forward as an organisation. And just really quickly, thank you for having us, and we're really looking forward to the discussion. And anytime you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out. We are here to support you guys as well. So thanks, David.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rachel. And yeah, a genuine thank you for your kind of consultation with the sector and the whole approach that you've just outlined, which is really doing all of this through a co-design process with the sector. So thank you. So encourage everybody, please, comments and questions in the chat. We've already got a few coming through. I thought I might start though again, kind of back to you, Rachel or Lisa. Whether there's kind of pieces that you picked up in some of those introductory remarks that you've already taken away and saying, wow, that's something we hadn't thought about. And there's a specific question in the chat you might want to pick up as well, which is around how does what FSO is doing relate to the various digital compacts operating at a state level. So we've got the New South Wales digital compact that's been in place for a while. We've just launched one in Victoria. I know other states and territories are looking at that. So you may or may not be able to comment specifically on that, but then, would kind of love to hear what were your perspectives from some of the earlier discussions too.
Do you want to start, Lisa?
Sure. It's been really great discussions, because it's always good to see how digital literacy skills being taught, whether it's formally or informally. And we know that informally is a result as people need to do something now, and they learn how to do it, and they go and seek out the person to help them. So whether that's digital skills or whatever skill it is, that's essentially how we learn. So we're really interested in that. We also know that there's lots of digital training and lots of programs that are happening. And so essentially the work that we have been doing is to, and sorry, I'm going to use this vocational education term, we're writing formal curriculum or formal units of competency. The advantage of that to everybody is that all the skills that they're learning in these various programs that they're doing, when the time comes that they want to enter into formal training, they would be able to get those skills that they have, that they've learned, recognised and actually benchmarked against something in the formal training system that then contributes towards their gaining a qualification, should they wish to gain a qualification. And so this has been a gap within our formal training system. And what we're seeking to do is to fill that gap so that for the people who require it, it actually gives them an entry or a pathway into the formal system. We recognise that a lot of people still need these skills who have no intention of entering the formal system. And as an example, my mother works as a volunteer at a library, and she actually teaches digital skills to people through the library system and programs, and puts together her own little plans around what they're doing and what topics they're searching. And, they're advertised and they're really successful. Those people don't want to enter the formal system. But for people that are providing the training, the units of competency that we've developed, or the curriculum, is a really good guide that you can use to say, am I actually covering off things that people do need to know? So we've referenced using DigComp 3.0, which comes from the European framework. Many of you will know about that. And what we've sought to do is all of the digital capability units have AI and cybersecurity embedded in them. So you'll be interested to know that, because even if you picked up one piece of training, you still need to know about AI, you still need to know about cybersecurity. So those two skills are not going away, and people need, anybody doing anything to access sites need to know about that information. So that's probably a long way of saying that these, I think, will be useful for everybody, whether you're actually using them for formal training or whether you're using them to guide how you're actually developing your community training to teach people. So whether it's my mother in a library or whether it's you in community groups, you're able to do that. And in reference to the question, how are we using these in the various state compacts? So in those state compacts, they have access to these units, and we're using particularly the AI stream of units to have non-accredited training and resources developed around those. And so that will also be resources that everybody will have access to.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Lisa. Get to some of the questions in the chat, and I might just pick up on one because it's related, Lisa, to what you were just saying about you using DigComp 3.0. But maybe I might pass this one to Jess, but I'm welcome for other ones to join in as well. But kind of is there a standard for digital mentors and champions? This question from Ricky. How do we ensure that members of the community can get consistent and safe support?
Thanks for the question, Ricky. I was just writing an answer to it in the chat too, so thanks for saving me the typing. David, there isn't a formal standard for digital mentors, and I think what you heard from a number of people today is that actually what happens for digital mentoring often is that this is on top of other people's regular everyday jobs, and so it's not a formal qualification that people get. Having said that, I mean, there's definitely there are principles of digital mentoring, a piece of work that was done, some research a number of years ago by Michael Desdouani at QUT that supports the work that we do, and we definitely require our program partners to participate in training and the opportunity, I suppose, to come together to learn. Because I think as you've heard again, that this is not like you can't just get a standard or a qualification and that's it. Like, you're going to have to keep learning about what's the next piece that I need to support someone with. And so I think, yeah, there isn't a standard, but definitely a lot of experience, some research that backs up the training that's provided, but no set qualification. Although it's definitely something we've been exploring as an organisation who has so many thousands of digital mentors across the country.
Thanks, Jess. I don't know, Jacqui.
Can I add to that as well? And following on as well from what Lisa said, I think in terms of, I mean, the modules sound amazing, and also accreditation or any form of recognition that we can give people. But I think in terms of what we were talking about before in our work in the settlement space, often for people to get anything that's recognized as a qualification, it has to have an English language benchmark. And the reality of what we're doing is that we're responding to people's needs in the moment where they're not necessarily at the level of English that will enable to get that formal accreditation. And so we need to, and that's why I love, Lisa, what you're saying, that the idea that we can access these modules, but not necessarily, I would really hope as well that they have a lot of interactive tools within them and interfaces that we can help people practice on, because that's really what we need. But that's one of the biggest barriers for us. Often, some of our mentors might even not necessarily meet the English benchmark required. So that's our biggest difficulty when I think about formal accreditation for digital mentoring or teaching formally.
Fantastic. Maybe just while we've got you, Jacqui, and then I'll go to Kaitlin. There's just a question that came in while you were speaking to, kind of talking about mentors and whether they have working with vulnerable people cards. I know they all of those different pieces often vary by state, but how you think about that from a mentor perspective within your organisation.
So all our mentors would have working with children cards,
Yeah.
but not what we don't think we have working with vulnerable.
No,
someone
they vary.
Yeah,
they vary by state.
it's not. I guess it's not part of our compliance here at MercyCare in terms of, but I guess in terms of the training and support then that we would provide them, particularly around working with refugee and refugee trauma. If they're volunteers, that's we support. But in fact, I think at the moment all of our mentors currently are our staff, so they're bicultural support workers that will go through our staff training.
Fantastic.
Can I just say, David, just to add to that, any of the programs that Good Things funds to community, people have to have it's vulnerable people in some states, or they're working with children in another state. So definitely have to have those as a part of the funding requirement.
Yeah, fantastic. And to you, Kaitlin, was keen to ask you, Kaitlin, anyway, kind of how you think about this from a community educator perspective.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I wanted to make, David. So firstly, I was really buoyed by FSO's understanding of the circumstances that we've all spoken to this morning around the barriers that are faced by people in the community learning digital skills, but also the fact that it's often out of necessity, not rolling along to upskill specifically in digital. But I wanted to, I guess, make a comment about a bit of a disjoint that I was feeling in the discussion there from Lisa around the unit of competency and the formal pathway. Like a lot of the people that our trainers are working with, they may very well get to a point where they're participating in formalized study, which is, would be a fantastic outcome, but they're also starting a very long way away from being ready for that. And so my comment, I guess, is that if a unit of competency has been built that's not going to be necessarily transcribed by a community educator, how functional is that when we're then essentially asking them to take your work when they're already having very limited time in their day to prepare this content? They may even be volunteers, and how they can kind of transpose that to be functional when we know that there is a lot of really wonderful content out there already.
Thanks, Kaitlin. Rachel may already have an answer for you.
Yeah, I do. So that is a really great question. And that's why these units are being designed so that they're not just going to be a unit of competency. They're broken down into individual sort of skill areas, I suppose. And while we're working and doing the trials with different cohorts, including the community cohort. So we're not expecting them to sit and do a full unit of competency. We're working with them, workshopping to say, what is actually going to be useful? What do you need? How can we adapt this training that we've developed so that these skills are still consistent? You're still learning to that same framework, but at a level that you need, in a way that you need, whether that's through a PDF, whether it's on your phone, whether it's, how you change it, and it's only going to be what they actually need. So to do the training, you're not actually going to have to sit there and do the full unit of competency. That's just an added bonus if someone works through and gets to that point and goes, you know what, yes, now I'm ready to take that step. So we're going to have these other, I suppose, resources out there in the community sector that are going to be non-accredited, to use another term, but are going to be available for community. So we're testing and trialling that at the moment.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rachel. Just picking up a couple more in the chat. One, just a shout out to Zena and the team from the WA Digital Inclusion Project, who was saying through your Community Champions program, engaging across different languages, and you've translated materials into over 10 different languages in WA, and then allowing the champions to deliver in their language of choice. It's just amazing work. Thank you. And for the panel, maybe to pick up from Soren, who's talking about the context in South Australia, particularly in regional and remote libraries, but I'm sure it's common to many organisations, is just how challenging it can be to find digital volunteers. And then even when you do, they don't necessarily stay for long. And so maybe just put that to the panel of other people's experience in working in that environment, and what do you do when you know it's most likely you might not have that volunteer for a long period of time, so you don't have a long time to skill or train them up.
Jacqui, did you want to go?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. Yeah, well, look, that's precisely why we have also chosen the course of recruiting bicultural support workers who are paid casual employees, and I guess it's in recognition that the program really can't sustain itself without some casual staff, and I think the benefit of that is that we're upskilling more people in the community who are then getting paid, I guess, and it has a flow-on effect to our SETS programs as well, because then we have an additional bicultural crew. So it really has benefited the SETS program as well by taking that approach. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank
Yeah.
you. Kaitlin, I don't know whether you want to add from the work you're doing.
Well, we're really fortunate in the fact that we have 3 team members who are on the road all the time across regional and remote Tasmania. But I live in a very regional and remote part of Tasmania, and just as a completely different discussion, but volunteer burnout is exceptionally real. Like, there's that one guy who's on the football club, the community bank, everybody leans on him for absolutely everything. And I'm sure that's replicated in remote communities all around Australia. So I guess that's just something to keep in mind when we're working with volunteers, that their hours are very limited as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kaitlin. And reinforces the importance for funding and budgeting and paying for these roles rather than purely relying on the generous contributions of volunteers across the community.
That's exactly what I was going to say, David. So
Thank you. So a couple of other questions. One was, how do we get in on this training? I think that's probably from an FSO perspective, but we'll make sure we include the links for the ongoing consultation work that's going on. And we can also provide some links in the follow-up or in the chat now, just on access to some of the current programs. Diane asks a really good question, and would love anybody to have the answer to this one. I think we've all been struggling with this. How do you go about finding and identifying the particular unit or whatever it is that you're looking to learn? How do you find that? Often find that that's a barrier to self-help systems. The user must do a search but doesn't quite know the right language or the phrase, or there's just overwhelming levels of content. Would love to hear anybody's perspective on how you can make that easy for somebody to find the content that they need.
I mean, I think that is an ongoing challenge across learning digital for everybody, because there is so much content, and I think what we always say to people is that's why it's important to have that kind of supportive digital mentor, or the friend, or somebody that you can work with to learn about new things. I mean, I always say to everyone, I mean, I have multiple digital mentors in my team because I happen to work with people who, some people know better things about other systems than I do and might know where to find things. And so I think that is, the benefit of having that really strong support. I mean, I know from our perspective, we have, a list of resources based on particular topics that people can access, and a whole lot of digital mentor resources that then link to that content, not just from our website, but from the Be Connected website, or from your website, David, or from Google, or from Microsoft. There's so much. And so I think, it's about, how do we make sure that people know what they want to learn first, and that's really that's an ongoing challenge for us all, but that there are ways of collating that information and having somebody else to talk to as well about accessing that support is also really, really important.
If I can add to that as well, especially in the community setting, a lot of what our trainers talk about is how the digital comes second, like the first port of call. And this is a real luxury if you do have people that are able to go out in the community and work with vulnerable cohorts, that they understand what they're interested in, what their needs are before they even start down the rabbit hole of what kind of digital tools or services they might be needing to work with.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And I don't know whether Rachel or Lisa, you want to comment from an FSO perspective. I know you had previously done work on a kind of digital skills navigator to bring a lot of that content together for community members.
Yes, we have. The way we've done it is, once again, we've aligned to DigComp 3.0, but we have proficiency levels